it sounds like this was really beginning to shape up your career path. Did you have a sense of that at that point?
I did. I mean, I pretty much knew after a couple of months of working as a paralegal that I want to be a lawyer. I mean, you know, paralegal does as much as a lawyer does, and I want to be a lawyer, which is interesting because my mom, when she became a nurse, said I should have become a doctor because the nurses do as much as the doctors. So
yeah, sometimes I think they do a lot more.
I know.
Actually,
I know.
I think nurses carry a lot more weight, I think, than a lot of doctors do. So you met your husband here. So what was his role in the firm at the time?
He was an associate in the litigation group, and I met him, well, I knew who he was, but we didn't start going out in, so this would have been, I graduated in '73, so this is the summer of '74. We started going out in June, we got engaged in July, we got married
You didn't rush it.
We got married in November, which in hindsight was too fast, because I started law school in August, and there were just a lot of stresses going on at the time. But I think I was very taken with the whole whirlwind aspect of it, of the romance, and thought, well, this would be kind of fun. And I decided to go to Fordham Law School because they had a program that would have allowed, initially I was planning to go to Fordham Law School, and I had a scholarship, and I was going to continue working at the firm. And then when David and I got engaged, he said, it's not a good idea for both of us to be working at the firm. So I quit my job, and just did law school full-time, in addition to being at the house when the cable person came and the phone person came and all the deliveries, because his job was the breadwinner job.
So, but that must have helped in a way that you were able just to focus entirely on your education.
It did. It did. Yeah, it was probably the first time that I didn't have a job in addition to going to school.
So you were able to manage all and start a family or start a new marriage.
Started a marriage, and then by the end of that year, in April or May, David had been offered in the same firm, but they were working on a case on the West Coast, and he was assigned to a case. It was for Universal Studios and Disney, and it meant him having to be on the West Coast pretty much full time. And I thought, well, we're so new in this marriage that it doesn't make sense for him to be on the West Coast and me to be here. So I took a year off from law school to follow him to the West Coast.
Interesting. So you had 2 gaps of your
yes,
law.
I did.
So you took a gap when you were going to go in.
Right.
And then you went over there. So what did you think, being from New York, about California?
I did not like California. It was L.A., and of course, you know, and these are some of the differences that came out between me and David. When we went there, the firm was paying for everything, and I wanted to live in Malibu on the beach, and he wanted to live in downtown Burbank, so he was really close to Universal Studios and could work 24/7. And the firm had said that they would get me a job as a paralegal or law clerk in one of the firms, and that never materialized. So after a couple of weeks of sitting out by the pool and listening to all these aspiring actors and actresses rehearse their lines, I decided I absolutely had to work. So I went back to being a secretary again, and I worked for a law firm as a secretary, and then I went in-house at a company called Akron, and I worked in their accounting department for pretty much the balance of our time out there. And then we came back to New York, and we came back in like February, and so it was too late for me to start up law school in the second semester. So I waited till the following year, and then in April, David announced that he really wanted to work at the State Department in Washington, D.C. permanently. So I came down here, interviewed at the law schools. Catholic University had reciprocity with Fordham, so I switched to Catholic, and we moved to D.C. in the summer of '76.
So did you have any idea your husband's aspirations had been towards
No,
the
he
state?
really didn't talk about that a lot. You know, that's one of the, we didn't talk about things a lot. That was probably one of the issues in our relationship.
Right, surprise.
That might be a lesson to be learned here. Communicate.
So, communicate. So what did he want to do at the State Department? What was his passion? What was his interest?
He wanted to work in the Office of the Legal Advisor, which he did, and he stayed there until just 6 months ago when he retired.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, but that was his passion. You
That was
certainly
his
want
passion.
to support somebody's passion.
Yes.
If they're there, but this was a lot of you making a lot of the
Yes.
adjustments and supporting the decisions, which is very common. I mean, I think a lot of us, you know, somebody's going to take a lead, we support our spouse
Right.
and switch off and on sometimes. But usually, from our generation, it was mostly the woman succeeds her wishes to her partner's wish.
And my whole family was still back in New York, and everybody was just devastated. At first, I was on the West Coast. And one of the things we did, because we're still a very close family, and my younger sisters would look to me for advice when they were dating, we got in the habit of using a dictaphone to tape conversations. So they would turn it around the kitchen table, and they would just talk into it for like an hour and a half, and they would send it to me on the West Coast, and I would listen to it, and it was almost like I was home, and it was great. And then I would, I get private tapes from my younger sister Nancy about need advice on dating Craig, and I would send private tapes back. So it was kind of fun.
That's really kind of clever. I mean, think about that idea of that while you're apart from your family, to put just in the kitchen table to permit a tape to run, which allows you to hear the dynamics of the conversation. Because I don't think people are necessarily in there just talking to you directly. You could hear.
Oh no, they were talking among themselves, and the usual ribbing that goes on in a family. So.
I think that's such a great suggestion. I mean, communications have changed, but that was really high tech to be able to do it at the time. So people be sending tapes back and forth. So did you put your tape on at your kitchen with you and your husband?
Oh, absolutely.
You did.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
So they would, and it'd go back and forth.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. Did you ever bring it down to the pool so people could hear the movie stars, the aspiring movie stars?
No. And it's interesting.
Your lines here.
I still have some of those tapes. And what's really interesting is my dad has since died, so to have that and to hear his voice on them is really nice.
That is, that would be very, very touching. But I think that was a great way to continue to build the bridge between your family, especially if you're used to being together for a long time. I think that's really, really important. So you ended up moving from New York, New York, California, back to New York. And
then to Washington. And I think that Washington looked pretty good as compared to California. I still very much love New York, but Washington was a much smaller, sleepier southern town in 1976. But it was still, kind of exciting to be here. And I was at Catholic University, and I also got a job working at the D.C. office of the law firm in New York that I'd worked at as a law clerk. So I worked 20 hours a week as a law clerk and went to law school, and everything was fine. And then I found out that I was pregnant.
Surprise.
And unexpected, but fortunately perfectly timed so that Jason arrived the summer between my second and third years of law school. So he was very good about that. And the only problem was that when Jason arrived, and I had another friend in law school who had a baby at the same time. And after the babies were born, I remember calling her at her house, and she said, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? I just put Katie in her little seat, and she just sits there and coos while I go around the kitchen and do things and work." And of course, Jason had colic, and the only thing that would quiet him down was me holding him or me nursing him, and he never slept. So here I am holding this baby, and no way I could read, and no way I could study. I moved all my classes from my third year to night. And when my husband would come home, I would hand Jason to him, and I would go to class, and then I would come back, and as I would walk up the walkway to the townhouse, I could hear Jason crying, and then as soon as I would come in, I would hold him, he would stop, and that went on from, he was born June 23rd until probably end of October. And there was a point during that time period where I remember saying to my husband, "I have to quit school. There's just no way. I'm not reading, I'm not studying, I'm not absorbing, I'm exhausted." He said, "Don't make a decision yet, just wait and see, wait and see." And then sure enough, right around Thanksgiving or early November, Jason started taking 2-hour naps during the day, and he stopped crying. And it's amazing what you can do when you really focus on a 2-hour period of time. And I did fine in law school. And so I just continued, and that was it.
So hanging in there. So there was another one of those moments of lessons, hanging in, even in the moment of despair. Don't necessarily throw in the towel. And that was pretty good advice from your husband. Don't make a decision yet. You can wait and make a decision. So I think that's another one of those great moments where we learn something that's really valuable to us, that it's okay, you didn't have to jump.
Right.
And I know my firstborn was born June 14th, colic. I mean, never slept. And I was one of those people, read every book on neonates. Okay, they sleep 24 hours.
Right.
He didn't read the book.
Yes.
So that was, and I never understood how people had more than one kid. Because I just thought every kid did that. I'm going, they look so happy.
Oh, I know. I
don't understand this happiness thing with this kid. It's tough. It's really, really tough. But was he a joy to you having your firstborn?
He was. And the really great thing about Jason, because I was holding him so much and with him so much, he was a very early talker, because I was always pointing out things to him. Look outside, birds, trees, whatever. So he was a very early talker, very precocious. And he walked early. He walked when he was pretty much running when he was like 8 months old. and just running all over the place. And I remember, he was such a little person, and I go into a store and there's this little thing running around. People are looking at me like, how old is he? I'm like, he's 8 months old, but he's a little precocious. So no, he's been great.
Is he athletic today?
He is athletic, yes. Yes, he was very athletic.
Definitely
yes.
aspires to it.